Maiona? Mali? Kubira chacho.
No, but I gave you.
And I step on it.
Why say so? So why are you quiet?
Shut around. Between the step on machine E.
All right.
Maiona notification.
What?
Number. Ani ndimatubirwa atina kuita 45 seconds.
Okay, guys, we are 40 seconds away now. That's up to you. It's too late, isn't it?
10 seconds.
Who is the lady in the studio, by the way?
I'm Yvonne.
Yvonne, she's with Zim Daily. She's a content creator.
15 seconds.
Okay, we are 15 seconds away.
10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And of course, thank you to all our guests who are watching us the world over. This is the first ever episode on journalism is not a crime, where we are coming to all of Zimbabwe and the people across the world. We are having a digital protest. What can actually term the 30-day digital protest, as journalists are coming together across Zimbabwe to say that the media sector is under attack. We are under attack as various journalists and various media fraternities. Today, we're going to be having a very interesting conversation with many people that we have today. But quickly, from where we are right now, I am live from the ZOC studio, cadets of Technic TV, of course. But we are so much excited to have my co-host right beside me. Is the editor with Zim Daily as well. That's Yvonne with me. Yvonne, thank you so much and welcome to this show.
Thank you so much. Thank you for having me on the show. It's exciting because what we are trying to do is to raise an awareness. The biggest challenge that we face today is that journalists are under attack. The media fraternity is under attack. There are so many things that we just need to put into perspective, because what we are seeing is a continued assault on the profession. Now, why are we journalists and why did we choose to get ourselves onto this path if there was no need for the fraternity to function? So, Jono, it's exciting to be here, especially in this season where globally journalists are under attack.
And of course, much more interestingly, today we are going to be having a guest, a very special guest. But before we just go to our guest, also on the panel, we have a panelist as well who has a very strong passion and interest in media, media ethics, media standards. I personally invited him because we always talk about media standards, ethics, and I know we've been having lots of conversations across as far as media is concerned. We are so much excited to have Mr. Mawere joining us live from South Africa. Just before we go, we'll get to introduce you guys, our special guest for this first episode. Mr. Mawere, thank you so much for joining us.
No, thanks. Much appreciated.
Okay. That's Mr. Mchunga Mawere there joining us from South Africa as part of the panelists we are going to be having this discussion. And of course, last but not least, is the man that we're going to be all talking to today, having a strong conversation. He has made headlines across Zimbabwe. I think for the past few months, he's been in our headlines, breaking different stories I know the biggest story has been the drug story, and we also been talking about the abduction of his brother. And of course, unfortunately, you also witnessed the police officers now saying he's also now under arrest. But this is a very seasoned journalist who has been doing a lot in the media. I do not need to preempt him. And welcome. Thank you so much for having us, Mr. Mduduzu Matuthu, the Zimlive editor.
Thanks, Tony. I'm really grateful to be here.
Thank you. Finally, we are here. I know we had serious power cut issues, delays, but we are here. We are glad to be here. I'll shoot this question to you straight so that we just kickstart into our show. Mr. Matuthu, I know currently you've been under serious attacks as a journalist, and there've been a lot of things that the media has been talking about. One of the latest issues is the issue of your brother, who's also a media student, so to say, your cousin, Tawanda Mtechiwa. And you have been posting and talking a lot about what has been happening, what has been transpiring. If you can just let us know, how is your cousin Tawanda Mtechiwa?
Thanks. Just to make a small correction, it's sorry, I'm having an echo. I'll have to fix it.
For having an echo. Okay, I think the crew behind the scenes will try and help us out with that.
Okay.
With that echo issue. Yeah. Please, if you can just work on the echo issue, because these guys are saying that they're having an echo. But maybe you can. Yeah. Okay. So
I was just going to say that. By the way, it's my nephew, Tawanda Mtechiwa. Not my brother or cousin, but that's fine. As you probably know by now, Tawanda went through some very serious and traumatic experience at the hands of people that we have, I believe, now certainly established were acting on behalf of the state. And he has been obviously seriously, shall we say, he has suffered some medical complications as a result of the torture that he went through over 3 days, starting on July 30 when he's abducted in broad daylight in Bulawayo. So he has been going for dialysis to try and resolve some issues with his and he's been undergoing some tissue on his buttocks, and also, of course, the most important part, I believe, has been the mental side of it. He has been undergoing quite some serious counseling because I think the biggest damage, the greatest damage that these people managed to do was to damage his mental health. So I see it as well with maybe say Joanna Mamombe. I see it in others, and of course they're accused of faking these things. But I've seen Tawanda up close, and I just know what sort of impact these sort of things can have on someone. And we're just glad that we have Tawanda in one piece. But of course, as a family, we are more interested in justice, in getting Tawanda justice. And that's what we've been actively fighting for. And connected to that, of course, while we're fighting for justice, we know that one of the biggest, connected crimes into all this is the Impala car rental company in Harare. We have gone to the High Court, got an order to go to Impala and recover some certain documents and the map, checking information, indicating where this car that abducted Tawanda went, and so forth. Because Impala have refused to cooperate, and as part of that, They have called police to protect them, and this has resulted in the arrest of more students. And Taonda, of course, is a journalism student at MSU. We've seen Zinasu protesting outside Impala, and they've been arrested and beaten up. Journalists have been beaten up, and it's just an unending crime scene.
It's actually horrifying to understand some of these things that are happening to people, and the media, the state media, has been telling us that these are fake abductions, etc. So when you give us such a sad graphical illustration, it's really disturbing, especially to young journalists who are growing and who are developing and trying to do this. So, in our country. So, Mduduzu, I think maybe you can also share with us a little bit about why you are on the wanted list by the police. Have you been privy of what they really are looking for? And why?
Maybe the question is this still on the wanted list? Because I know this happened towards the 31st of July movement, where we heard that the police were now looking for you before they started doing a collateral damage arresting your cousin. Are you still on police wanted list? And what are the charges that they're preparing against you?
On the same day that they abducted Tawanda, they also grabbed my two nephews and also my sister because they couldn't get me. So they then came to the house. They were armed with a warrant, which they said was to look for subversive materials. And it was mainly talking about electronic devices. And so it was that they took a laptop that they found in the house. They also took a pellet gun. They took two masks that were written ZANU-PF must go. And then they claimed that they found a flyer. I don't know, they said it's a flyer that was supposed to be used on July 31st. Of course, I've asked everyone in that house, and no one seems to know the flyer. And my sister was not present when this particular flyer was found. So, anyway, they obviously took what they took. They wanted me to come to the police station. They haven't told us what the charge is. But for me, it was really never about July 31. It was never about any subversive materials. The only subversive items they wanted was my laptop and my phone, because they believe that in there they will find my sources for particular information that we have put out as Zimlive. This includes the work that we did on the drugs corruption scandal, and also even now they have a bigger incentive to find me, because they are very keen to understand how we got that CCTV footage that has caused them quite a lot of headaches, because for the first time we've been able to place them at the scene of an abduction, and we've been able to prove that the state is actually responsible for the ongoing abductions of human rights activists, journalists, comedians, and all other people who have been victims of the state.
Issues that are happening, and fully to investigate fully, because one of our major responsibility as a fraternity is to keep our publics informed. But with such things happening, do you think that more journalists are going to be bold enough to step out and actually get the right information to the people, or this is a way of coercing the fraternity so that we don't talk about those things?
Well, I think it's a very alarming thing that's happening, the targeting of journalists. I remember the other day I was checking with the Zimbabwe Union of Journalists, how many journalists have been arrested or have been involved in some incidents with the police or some elements of the security establishment since the start of the year. And I was informed that it's about 30. I don't know any place in the world, even in a war zone, where journalists have been targeted in such a systematic way than in Zimbabwe. And it tells you that there's something really wrong about how the government here is dealing with its citizens. And what's particularly real, I mean, for me, watching those scenes from Impala Current the other day, where some goons who have not identified themselves as police or anything can pounce on a group of students lawfully and peacefully addressing a news conference, target journalists, destroy their equipment, steal their phones, and the police are watching. The uniformed police, that is, are watching, and they are only waiting that when these men are finished doing this, their terrible business, then they pick up the student leader and take him to jail on some charge that is not still clear to me as we speak. So that incident, the way they went about it, the brazenness of it, I think will be alarming to any journalist, young or old, who will be wondering what the hell is going on.
Yeah, I just need to understand the latest attacks that have been coming to you as an individual. Would you think that these issues could be separate from the popular story on the drugs gate? Do you think that the drugs gate probably is the reason why you are a target? Because they're not really saying, even from what you're telling us, as far as the police docket is saying, the crimes that you're charging on. Do you think that the reason that they could be targeting you is because of the drugs gate issue that you've been exposing?
Well, I've no doubt whatsoever. And I'm also quite sure that these events around myself are being directed by Mr. Delish Nguaya and his associates in the Mnangagwa family. Because he has been, when it was Zimlive that first reported on this drugs corruption. And I think at the time, Nguaya was able to speak to us, and he was trying to really kill the story. He didn't want to cooperate. He didn't want to be quoted saying this or that, but he just came across as, when I read what he has been up to, how he even comes into the public spotlight. First coming as some growing up, I believe, in Kadoma, coming to Harare, joining the police constabulary, and then posing as a police officer, posing as a CIO, making friends in high places, being a law unto himself, and being just very powerful. I just knew that was dealing with quite a sophisticated individual. But what has happened after the exposure of that corruption is that we have literally cost Mr. Nguaya and his associates $60 million in the cancelled tenders that they had been given unprocedurally and unlawfully. And I think that if I were to cost you $60 million, you would not be very happy with me. And I think that's the case with Nguaya. So what we've seen is that they've come after everyone who was connected to that story, by the way. You see it in Hopewell, was quite very active in pushing the story on Twitter. He has spent, I believe, 42 days in prison. They have come after myself and my family. They have gone after the police officers who actually investigated this whole stuff. In fact, I believe the biggest piece in terms of the drug story was the intervention by Interpol. I believe that if we didn't have that intervention by Interpol, maybe the story would have died. But Interpol wrote a letter to ZRP saying that we have found this mysterious deposit made by the Zimbabwe government into an account in Hungary. Can we please have an explanation about this money and so forth? We have frozen it and so on. So the police officer in the ZRP who was assigned this was a superintendent, I believe is Nyachega or something. He writes to the finance ministry demanding to know how Zach was, drugs, the company of Mr. Delish Ngua was appointed for those tenders and, why that money was paid and so on. So Mr. Nyachega is now an accused person, accused of corruption, I believe, something like that, coming from some 2 years ago. And then the guy who applied the handcuffs on Mr. Ngwaya is a senior cop called Obeilo Moyo, I believe. He has been arrested, accused of corruption over housing stands or something to that effect. And then just yesterday, we had the CID director, the top guy in the CID, who approved the arrest of Mr. Ngwaya. He was arrested yesterday. He's accused of corruption from a few years ago, I believe, something to do with protecting syndicates in Mutare or something like that. And of course, the key also, I might add as well that there was a guy at the ZBC, Gilbert Nyambavu. He, the story is quite strange. He initially had this clip of Mr. Ngwaya dealing with talking to Mr. Nangagwa, saying he's donating. In fact, this whole 60 million thing was first presented as a donation by Mr. Ngwaya to the president of Zimbabwe for the COVID-19 effort. And in fact, that's where really I got interested in Mr. Ngwaya, who donates 60 million of his own money to a government. So when the more I read about Mr. Ngwaya, the more I knew that this guy is phony. There's no story. There's something bigger here happening, and that's where it all kicks off. People at ZBC looks like they saw this and they were quite concerned about the story themselves. It didn't sound right that this guy can be donating 60 million to the president or to the government. And then they held that story. They didn't put it out. And then I believe Mr. Ngwaya was very unhappy about that particular editorial call by the ZBC. He then got a camera person who was there when this thing, so-called donation was made. He made the camera person run the item on a weekend when the most of the editors are away, and perhaps the editorial decisions are much easier to implement. So he managed to get that clip to run on that weekend. So with this funny situation, sometime when Nick Mangwana was on Twitter, very sure that ZBC never ran that clip until somebody then just proved it and said, "Oh, Chief, check this thing." And then it was Nick Mangwana who then said, "Well, we'll look into this thing," because and then he came back to report that named camera person, he named the guy, had done this thing without approval and so forth. And so they suspended that guy. After the fellow is suspended, it looks like he then pulled his own strings, and then he got in touch with the First Lady of the Nation, Auxilia Mnangagwa. And the next thing, Gilbert was summoned by Auxilia Mnangagwa, I believe. The information I have or I've been told is that the meeting lasted almost an hour in a room full of people, about 20 people, including the First Lady. But it was her mainly leading the charge and just going after the journalist and so forth. And in no time, Gilbert Nyambavu is removed from his position as head of news, and he's given some other, he's moved sideways. I think just given some other job that no one wants really. But it just shows you the link between between Delish Mguaya, the president's wife, and of course we know that there's a link here between Delish and the president's twin sons, Sean and Collins. So it's a story that has cost quite a lot of people significant amounts of comfort, resources, and and who is to know where these people are going to stop.
And now guns are all out. And I'm sure we can all agree that instead of now having new concerted efforts into making sure that those who have been exposed are arrested, the whole system is turning around now. They're now saying, okay, but who is exposing us? Now let's go against the system that is exposing us. So now they're now shooting the messenger and completely forgetting the message. Mr. Chumamawera, I need you to just weigh in there on the role of ethics and how political. I know you've been in the politics. You've been having a strong interest with the media. Faced with such a situation, and this is what we are seeing happening in Zimbabwe. And I know you've been listening closely to what Matuthu was saying there. Your check over that issue.
Yeah, maybe we can start with the dispute. There's a profession of journalist, and there is a dispute as to whether corruption exists or doesn't exist, and whether this profession is a bridge to what needs to be known, and are people being informed, educated, and entertained by these stories, or the journalists themselves are doing the job that they need to do to be able to get the public to know better. And I was asking a question to Matuthu. Imagine it's midnight and you look up the stars, the shining stars of this profession. Who would it be? Just even 3 people who shine, and these are the custodians or guardians of the profession. Then we can be able to start there. If not, then I would then ask the next question. This is 40 years after independence. Do we have the men and women who will be the shining stars, in your own opinion, as an experienced craftsman?
Is that a question?
Yeah, that's a question. Do you see anyone that you say, these are the shining stars?
It's a tough question, Mr. Moore, because I think, if I'm correct, you're asking me to tell you if I've got media heroes. Is that it?
Not heroes, icons, like Messi, Ronaldo. Or...
Okay. It's. I think everyone is doing a great job under very difficult circumstances, because the media industry, as I know it, is not a well-paying profession. A lot of bright people. I can tell you of one of my favorite writers, Ranga Mbere.
Yeah.
He has left the profession to work in business. There are lots of fathers like him. We have left for the simple reason that the media industry is not a fulfilling pursuit in Zimbabwe. So, and the journalists who are in the newsrooms are working for small pay. They don't have transport. They don't have the tools that they need to deliver good journalism. So, under those very difficult circumstances, I would say that that's the fact that we're still here and we're able to report on big stories that have consequences, like the arrest and firing of the health minister. It's a testament that there are still a lot of good work, a lot of good things that our profession is doing right.
What if somebody says a journalist, or what we call them, are also partisan? They are not there to pursue the truth and nothing but the truth, but they come with forks and they are mere front men for a deeper dispute which falls outside the four corners of the profession.
Well, I think what you're calling a deeper dispute, if I'm correct, is the political situation developing in Zimbabwe.
Whether there's a crisis or there's no crisis, and the journalists, they are coming clothed as journalists, and many of us are guilty of the same. I remember in the 2000s, you said, why don't you write yourself? I used to write a weekly column. And in a sense, some people thought I was a journalist. I said, no, I'm not. I'm just giving my personal opinions. But then you recognize there is a problem. And the professionals themselves, either because of fear, because of lack of standards, because of lack of guardians, you find that actually there is no standards. It's an animal farm.
Well, I'm sympathetic to your view, but I obviously have to disagree. I think for instance, take your story of SMM, which has been running for so long. If you were to assign a journalist on that story to say, okay, Chief, can you bring us up to speed from the time this thing develops, whenever that was, up to now, you are taking, this guy has to look through a mountain of paperwork. He has to spend a lot of many hours on it. And newsrooms are stretched. Right now, not many newsrooms can actually afford to take somebody away from the daily beat of the stories that need to be published tomorrow, which is basically the story of the day. So if we are going to dedicate some resources, human resources, to the big stories which require time and investigation and patience, we will probably need to fund our industry more. So it's okay, it's quite easy to say that the standards are not there, that the profession is not painting itself in glory and so forth, but there are some serious structural issues affecting the profession. And you know, people are just not. You see, you brought in the issue of I think you called it bias. Well, the journalists that we're talking about here are going to leave the newsrooms this evening, join a long queue, Zupco queue, very frustrating after a very long day at work for small amounts of money. They are just like your teachers, they are like your nurses. What the teachers are feeling, journalists are feeling. It's how do you separate, how do you divorce your poverty? How do you divorce your poverty and then say, oh, I'm going to be this shining professional who's just going to, in the name of fairness, write things that you don't believe?
Then I had an opportunity of talking about the drugs matter with Honorable Scala 2 days before he was arrested. And perhaps I should play that to you to see the real problem behind it, even the political actors who are involved in terms of getting to grips with the facts of the matter. And I hope you can hear it so that we can maybe get into it, whether it's a corruption matter or whether it's something else, because let me just play it. It's on SoundCloud. Perhaps you can hear it.
There's nothing abnormal. We are promoting the rule of law, constitutionalism, and we have not arrested any journalist. We have arrested political malcontents who are trying to unseat the legitimate government. He's talking about corruption trying to unseat the government. No, they're saying the corruption that they are referring to is not in specific terms. Because when you look at it, they're saying all the we have 2 ministers who have been arrested. We have, every time they raise issues, we follow up. And we have institutions, and we may be failing, but we are trying the best we can as a government. But if you know of instances of corruption which they failed to investigate, then bring them forward with the evidence, then we will take that up. There is no 60 million, but that's where the problem. There is no 60 million that exchanged hands. That's how much? 2 million. 2 million. 2 million. That's the fact. The fact is that they paid an advance of 2 million against the supplies which they say they have now received. Which they have now received? Yeah. So the 60 million was a framework agreement involving two sets of agreement, one for 20 million which was signed, and then the balance was 40 million. So the way it would work is that you pay, you get your stock. So against every payment, there must be stock that comes in with it. So that one was cancelled. I'm not briefed with those details. Otherwise, you are likely to be briefed with them. Yeah, but that's even from the day. So if we are not well briefed and well facts, then you are playing into their games. Because even if you send somebody to say, let's look at the 60 million, they will ask you, where is the 60 million? No, he didn't produce for 60 million. No. He only produced for that small consignment. Where the the 2 million was a separate one. Remember the one where payment was made against masks and stuff. Yeah, so that was about $1 million. Just under $1 million.
Yes, Ms. Mwere, can you still hear me?
Okay, I can hear you.
Yes, I'm sure you got the point, but unfortunately the quality is a bit not very clear. Some of our viewers are actually commenting about the quality there, but I'm sure you managed to put the point across there. But yeah,
and what are the facts, Matuthu? What did 60 million exchange hands?
The facts, Mr. Mwere, are quite simple. Drugs were not on the government procurement register. Drugs has been favored. They've been given contracts that they were not entitled to have. These contracts that they got when added up go past $60 million US.
Okay.
So how much of it had been paid, where the money is now, and that sort of stuff is something I think that the we have brought charges against them, we'll have to follow up. But otherwise, it's a very simple matter. Drugs were not entitled to those contracts, and well, you can as well add that drugs have gone and inflated prices. Yeah, and of course, we know how drugs got this contract. Me and you cannot just walk into the the health minister today and say, comrades, can you please sign off not one, not two, but I think 3 contracts for us to bring you certain medicines, and it will just not work. And what's worse, they were flagged by, I'm told, a security clearance which came saying, no, don't do this business with these people, they've got an outstanding. And they still proceeded and gave them a contract. So I think from that context, it's very clear that massive corruption has happened. And that corruption, if you trace it properly, it goes to the highest office in the land.
So in terms of your own assessment, the financial prejudice to the government, what is the quantum according to your investigations?
The finance ministry has said that they paid drugs, 2 million for stuff that was delivered. It was 2 million part of a 20 million, I think 18 million contract. So they were supposed to pay, that, and then they were supposed to pay off that money by 2 million every month until the whole thing or the whole contract was satisfied. So the short of it is that Interpol's intervention brought shame and embarrassment to the Zimbabwean government, because it just it smuggled of some money laundering, the whole affair. You know, you remember that drugs had only just registered as a company in Hungary 2 weeks prior to being paid $2 million US, and that's why bank staff then called Interpol, and then Interpol intervenes in the way they did. So the money that we know for sure was paid is the 2 million, but of course we haven't managed to.
And the other amount of 900 something, was it actually paid or outside?
Yes, it was. I remember that one. It was we established. It was established that the drugs had overcharged on those drugs, and then the ministry then said they negotiated with drugs to bring down the invoice to some 500,000 from 900,000, and they paid it.
So in total, we're looking at two.
Right,
okay, go ahead.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Drew. Thank you so much, Mr. Mawena. I think we just need to come back to the issue that we're really talking about, because sometimes when we start labeling journalists as partisan or not, that's where we begin to have a problem. I think globally, if you look at even international media, one can tell that this particular media is, when it reports, it's leaning more towards the left or the right, etc. But what we want to do is, should I be attacked as a journalist for having a certain perspective? Should journalists not have a perspective? Should journalists not have a perspective?
I think that you don't have a perspective, you probably you don't deserve to be in the newsroom. I think we need journalism. What is it without reflecting what the journalist is feeling, is experiencing, and is seeing every day with their eyes? So perspective Others want us not to have a perspective. Others want us to just repeat things like all our problems are caused by sanctions, that sort of stuff. I believe that will maybe make us less partisan. But we can see what the problem is, and it's not sanctions. So is that wrong to have that perspective? Am I, you know, and well, if we had a government that was doing things that we expect from a normal government, where people, activists are not grabbed from their houses at night, where people are not, where the court system is not weaponized against government critics, perhaps we can start moving towards this so-called non-partisan stance. But otherwise, at the moment, I think I would rather be dead than pretend that I can't see what's going on.
I just need to understand that, because these are the issues that we're making a clarion call against. Should I be targeted as a journalist? Should I feel threatened because I've written something? Because this is the broader aspect that we want to address and that we're trying to talk about right now. Because surely above all is said and done, journalism can never be criminalized. Journalism is not a crime. That's our clarion call. All we are simply saying is, the moment you hit the publish button, should you feel afraid that there's going to be a third or a fourth force that's going to come to you after you do a constitutionally enshrined or protected job? Because this is within our constitution. Section 62 of the constitution allows each and every journalist here in Zimbabwe to practice journalism, and you should be able to do this without fear or favor. We are going to be taking a short break. We're going to be back after this short little message, and then we are going to come back, and then we have more conversation around this issue. When we are saying journalism is not a crime, this is the we're going to be getting into the second half of this segment, second and last segment. Of course, to all those viewers who are watching us live right now, we do have Mr. Mduduzu Matuthu, who is joining us live from online platform, and also wherever he's, I like that one. And also we do have Mr. Mawere joining us as well as part of the panelists from South Africa. We are taking a short break. We'll be back just after this message.
Yvonne.
It's audio again. Guys, we're just taking a breather. Are you alright?
Yeah, we're okay.
I want to talk to Yvonne. Yvonne. You say she's called Yvonne, right? Yvonne.
Yes, Mdu.
What's up?
Apana. What do you say?
Tell me about Zim Daily. Is it yours?
Okay, we'll come back after this.
No, it's not mine. I'm just I freelance there. I don't know where this guy gets his information.
Okay, we are 10 seconds. We are 10 seconds, guys.
FM tender. Line in.
Brian.
3, 2, 1.
Hello? Hello?
They disappeared. Huh?
Yeah, they seem to have left us in the vacuum.
Last time I remember was standby where.
Yeah, there's nobody. So let's see. Oh, there's a gone.
Oh,
So it's a power problem. So, but how do you see the way out of this quagmire, where government actors are saying it's not journalism, it's politics?
well, I mean, you have journalists attending a news conference being addressed by NASU, which both are lawful activities for both parties. And then you have them being attacked by some thugs in broad daylight. I don't know how to describe that. I just think they have crossed a certain line where they don't seem to care about what the world thinks about them or what anyone thinks about them. And I think it's a very dangerous moment for everyone, and also for them, I'm sure, because the people might come to a point where they feel like as Malema said, they're already dead.
All right. So if you were asked to give a recommendation of how to restore that confidence, because there are people, rightly or wrongly, who hold different views on the profession. And
Restore confidence in the profession. I don't think there's anything wrong, to be honest.
Okay.
I don't think there's anything wrong. I just think that we need more investment. Here's Tony Colin. Hey, Chief. Hey, comrade. Is this a hand? What a crisis. Yeah, I think the issues are covered. We just, of course. The issue is really about our members who are suffering, well, like the rest of everyone. It seems to. No, maybe, maybe, maybe we end it there, shouldn't we? Okay. No, it's fine. I think it's cool. It's cool. I wish I was seeing everyone's pictures when I was speaking. Okay. No, I'm saying I could see myself, but I'm not seeing everyone else that I'm talking to. Wongu chef. Iribo. Absolutely. And talk about your behavior. Yeah. Mm. Mm. What's pure books? Oh, is it called pure box? Okay. I need to talk to Yvonne. I think the guy has run out of data. Mr. Moore,
All right.
your friend Super has been your friend Super has been acquitted.
That's what I'm just seeing now. Yeah.
Yeah.
I just saw the headline. Did you carry the story of Super?
The story has just come in.
No, I'm saying the allegations were they carried under you?
I'm sure it's something to do with megawatt, isn't it? The
the reward Kangai.
Yes, Kangai and so on. I'm sure you won't enjoy this.
Yeah, that's I will try him some other time and see are there any, because this was your show and the issue was applied
Is it supposed to be? What do you mean? You think it? Me and Roman Mawere are still talking. So are you saying we're online? Yeah, I'm talking to Mr. Mawere. Mr. Mawere, are you live from your end?
I'm live on my end.
What does that mean?
That means you are the other side is the one that dropped out, but the broadcast kept on.
Jesus Christ! So, yeah, he's live, bro. He's live. On which platform, Mr. Moore?
We are on the YouTube, TechMag, Facebook.
He says we're on YouTube, TechnoMag, and yeah. So we probably need to shut it down. Eh?
All right. Okay.
All right. Sorry, comrade. You know, I don't know this technology thing.